Hey, how you doing? Hey there, ho there. What you know there? And welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensie Owl Bob. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And hi, I am he, your Sensie Owl Bob. We're out here to tell you stories. I'm in my sauna, and it's also a tin can and a drum. You can hear the bass or the timpanis. So here's a nice little thunderstorm shower. It'll cool things off. It was getting a little toasty. What's going on with you guys? Right? Let's see some. Hey, get some thumbs up, likes. Make a comment or two. You want to get a hold of me, the dudeawake42 at Gmail. You want to put some money in the old PayPal, right? That's, again, the dudeawake42 at Gmail. The dudeawake42 at Gmail. Small, all one thing. The dudeawake42 at Gmail, right? So, how you doing? So, just wanted to see how you doing. And, I've been talking about how things are changing and I've been pretty much talking about the big splat and how things are changing for the last 8 years, right? Since, I have almost 2,500 shows on my Dreamy Dreamland with Sensie Owl Bob show. And I tell stories, I give metaphors, verses, whatever, to... that's what a sensei does. A griot does. Tells a story to enlighten, right? Now, don't believe a word I say. These things are stories, When I tell you about, historical matters of, what was the name of that, those guys in the Mideast who kind of, Palestine was supposed to be one country where everyone could go and live in peace, not just be a place for some sect, right? Not even a religion, a sect, right? Because the Hebrew tribes are 12 tribes, right? And let's see, say hi, right? What? Okay. Again, remember, put things in all caps so I can read it. You're not screaming at me. You're just allowing me to read it. And so it's nice to greet, good morning. So what do you think about what's going on, right? My basic treatise that lots of people are starting to come around on is that this is a scripted game show, right? So we have a president who is a game show host. He was paid at least 10, 11 years, a 11-figure salary just to be, you're fired, right? And then the first iteration of the Orange Turd was, you're fired, and it's chaos, and everyone's kind of sick, so why don't we inject Clorox? That worked great, right? But you got a bunch of, what do you call that? Not just mercantile, not just mercenary. When you think Jesus is coming back, right? And you want it. You want end times to come, right? And again, that's just a sect. It's not even Christianity, right? Because what most people don't know is that Islam is Christianity. Yeah, what did he say? I'd like to see some Christians get down and prostrate themselves to love's co-creation 5 times a day like Muslims do. Think they could? I don't think so. They're too stuck in their egocentric moron self. Listen to that. That's my little stream. And it did. It came down a good number of degrees. So with the 5 of you washing, MB, but it's all annoying. See, that again, I know I can be annoying. I've had plenty of people come up to me that I had no idea who they were. And, I want to kill you. And I go, excuse me? You make me, you make me upset. You'd say things and then I think, and I don't want to think. I want to kill you. And I said, right there. I have to apologize right here and right now. Let me say I am sorry for anything that I may have said, done, or been a positive example to basically get you to stop being a stupid moron. And I know it's not your fault. You're wearing a colored hat, right? Yeah, I hate colors. Well, then wear a rainbow. What? Oh, I gotta kill you. I said, no. It's more than annoying, kids. No, I mean what is happening around the world. But, my friend, this has been happening around the world since recorded time. Mesopotamia, Babylon, Egypt, Samaria. Go read the book, You Suck. What? What book says you suck? Well, this book called the Torah. What? Yeah. The Old Testament, King James. If you take the Hebrew word, Torah, which isn't even the right word, but if you take that word and translate it Sumerian to Greek, because in the time of Jesus, everybody's speaking Greek. That was a business language. That's what everyone, none of the Jews, and they weren't even Jews, those guys didn't even speak Hebrew. Even the rabbis didn't really speak Hebrew. They knew a few words. It's like Catholic priests. They don't speak Latin at all. When I was going through the seminary, I learned Latin and Greek early on just so I could learn how to speak. When that nun murdered me in first grade, they sent me to a Maryknoll sanctuary, which was truly a sanctuary, meaning in its deed of records, it was meant as a place where anyone could go and would not be attacked, right? And that came from the Long Island Indians. And then once the white people were killing them, they basically, the only Christians who said, who went and helped them were the Maryknolls, who weren't even Maryknolls yet, because everybody at that time were Jesuits. But these guys, the Maryknolls, were the nicer Jesuits, right, who were scholars, right? So, that place in Garden City has been a sanctuary for over, 600 years. So anyway, when I went there, they taught me how to see again and how to hear and how to speak. And that's why I have a little strange kind of lisp and a twang and a few other things in my voice, because that nun crushed my esophagus and broke my jaw. I put it over here, right? And, crushed this ear and decimated the orbit. See the difference in my eyes? See how they're like, one's a little higher, one's a little fatter, one's a little deeper. So I couldn't see out of this eye, and I couldn't hear out of this, and I couldn't speak, and I could barely breathe. And they taught me how to do all of those things, right? First, by learning Latin and Greek, right? First, how to read it with just this eye. This is my I Spy eye, right? And this is my everyday eye, that I see the illusion, And it's the interesting things about horses, right? Why do they have to wear blinders? Because their eyes this eye is like a horse's eye. It got smashed and it changed in shape and definition. And it looks more like how a horse looks. So I see the stuff that horses see. And the reason why they are given blinders is that if they could see the stuff that's off to the side, right? I think your voice is perfect. Well, thank you, right? But I have to think about what I'm going to say or I stutter, right? So I got this, your computer has a RAM, hard drive, and a, a memory, a deep memory, right? And so my brain is the cottage cheese between my ears. That's my thing that can like make pretty. And it's not raining. Otherwise, it would sound like timpani on my car. So as long as it rains like this once or twice a day, we won't have forest fires. But boy, there's going to be serious forest fires. Have you guys noticed that the whole Midwest is now 40 degrees? How'd that happen? It was like 3 digits like 2 days ago. How'd it go to 40 degrees? How'd that happen? How did that happen? Pretty simple. The North Pole up there is melting. These big, where Greenland is. And why does Donnie want Greenland? Because that big sheet of ice is going to melt a lot quicker. And that's going to be a whole new sea that cities and resources and all kinds of crazy things are going to be found up there. And he wants, Donnie is doing exactly what's on his script. He may sound like he's totally nuts, but no, he's doing what's on. That's all he can do is read the script. They rewired his brain. They gave him 11 years of practice of that TV show, The Apprentice, and he was the apprentice. And he was put there because he is breaking all of the manufacturer norms, right? I got to go. I'm going to sub T for your time. And again, remember, anybody, my laptop is dead. Well, it's being revivified, and my tablet is also. So I'm doing this on an ancient phone that still has Dreamy Dreamland on it. So I have to let it go through its process. That takes about 15 to 24 hours to go into my channel, and then I have to go back and edit it and put it into public rather than private. So there's two things here that are private. One's you could see it if I still have to wait some more time to go in and make it public. Anyway, and the other one is still getting up there. But you guys can go back and look at all this stuff any old time you want. And you can make comments. You don't have to make the comments live. You can make them after. You can go and look at a show that I did 7 years ago and make a comment, right? And that's good. And I also hope you go all through my channel. And it's totally open, and you can, I don't think you can take anything down, but you can copy whatever you want. You can put that, your little hard drive goes zip and take whatever show you want. And I suggest that you do that. And I suggest you do that, if you have an older computer and you have, CD-ROM, that's probably the best storage medium there is because it's light rather than electromagnetics, right? A little thumb drive or a zip drive or that kind of stuff, that could get wiped. But CD-ROM, I don't think you can wipe that. That is a light graphic storage medium. Anyway, so you can do that. I would do that because there's each one of these stories, kids. I was talking to, I go visit the old holler grandmas. There's not too many left. And I was talking to one and she was doing a children's puzzle that's, Christian based, right? And so she's doing this puzzle, and we're talking about puzzles and games and all that kind of stuff. And then childhood, what we could remember back. And she could remember living in that city where they made tires in the Midwest. I think it's in Illinois. Anyway, and she came out of the house. Her mom wasn't really looking at her. Came out of the house, went down the steps, went, onto the sidewalk and walked to the end of the sidewalk. And she had gone with her mom, down those steps and on that sidewalk, but she had never gone any further past that corner. So she stopped and looked around, and nothing that she saw around that world that was even close to something that she knew what it was, right? So she was smart enough to go, if I go any further than this, I might get lost and no one will be able to find me. So I'm just going to turn right around right now and go back home. And she walks in, and her mom was like, where have you been? I said, I just took a little walk down the sidewalk. Don't ever do that down. But she remembered that, right? And the other thing she remembered, when she could first stand on her own, her grandma picked her up, put her on the dining room table, taught her a song, and said, sing the song and tap dance to it. And that was like 92 years ago. And I said, okay, you don't have to get up on the table, but get up and sing the song and dance for me. And she did. She tap danced because she was a tap dancer as a little girl. Her grandma taught her how to tap dance. Anyway, and she was barefoot, too. That was kind of cute. Anyway, next time she's going to do something like that, I'm going to say, hey, Hot Pockets, can I, videotape you? I want to show you to the world. And I didn't do it because I don't always have to. I used to be a photojournalist. And it's not like I had to and I'm an anthropologist and a social scientist, so I'm big into documenting things to deconstruct it. I'm also a forensic kind of guy. Anyway, so I would document pretty much everything I ever did, right? And I still do. I go back and watch shows, and there's tons of them where I show photographs of all the stuff I did, and especially New York in the 60s, 70s, 80s, like 90s, before digital photography. And digital photography, I was never a big fan of it because it's exactly what happened. The standards and devices changed and changed and changed. I mean, I have tons of videotape that's degaused. I used to shoot everything, and I had a Bolex. I used to shoot everything in 16 millimeter. Anyway, I digress. And those I still have, except my dad threw most of them out. I had some really great 16 millimeters of Aboriginals out there in the Nookenbah doing corroboree ceremony. And, I would start shooting him. I said, so we're near the corroboree? And he goes, yeah. Start rolling. So the old guy, we start walking. And we're just across the desert, and 100 miles around us. We're in the middle of a desert with a circumference of 100 miles to the closest anything. No water, no trees, just dirt and sand. And there's no, the big rock over there. There's no Ayers Rock. There's no landmark whatsoever. Yep, no and GPS at least was in everyone's phone. No one had that phone. This is like 1976, 77. And anyway, he goes, okay, start rolling. Get out your camera. Got out the camera. Got everything ready. Okay. And so we started rolling, and he knew that each roll was about 8 minutes long. So we walk about all of 30 seconds. He stops. He goes to his knees. And this guy is 1,000 years old. I mean, older than, I said, how old are you? He goes, I was here before white man. I said, what? He goes, yes, the first white man I ever saw. He showed up he was riding a horse. I didn't know what a horse was. We didn't have horses. And I didn't know what a white man was. But this guy shows up with clothes on, and I was naked. And he showed up and stopped. And I looked up at him, and I thought it was an animal, 4 hooves and a big body and one head, and then, another body and another head and an arm. And this guy got off of his body, and he walked up, and he was dressed in black, and he had a white collar. He was a Methodist minister. And he slapped this old man when he was 12 to 16, slapped him and said, you're living in sin. And he wrapped him up in a burlap bag. Anyway, so that's how old this guy is. And we stop, and he gets down on his knees, and he starts digging at the sand. He goes down about 2 feet. And right there is this bright red Samsonite plastic suitcase that in those days used to be advertised on television, like they were indestructible, right? So he kind of pulls it out of the ground. He opens it up, and there's feathers and different colored sand and twigs and not string, but string made out of hair of lots of things, people, animals, and he basically stands up, he points his head back, and out of his pack he takes some water and he drinks the whole thing, right? And then he takes his clothes off, and then he kneels back down and he takes the artifacts that were in the Samsonite suitcase and arranges them. And then he's in about, 40 seconds had gone by. He gets up and he urinates that bottle of water out on the twigs and everything. And he breaks off little chunks of everything. And then he assembles the twigs and feathers and sand and such into a thing that looks like a bird. And then he then takes the colored sand that's been turned into mud with his urine and starts painting his face and sticking feathers in it, right? And then he starts dancing around the Samsonite suitcase. And in the Samsonite suitcase, there's a little bag, and it looks like it's sawdust. And he sprinkles, he takes that bird and he sprinkles that on it. And then out of one of the little things that you can put stuff in the suitcase, he pulls out, a Bic lighter, and he touches it, and he just takes that flame onto the what looks like sawdust, and it bursts into flame, and it burns burns the bird up, and he then starts jumping up in the air and flying. And I and I got the whole thing on 16 millimeter film, and then he continues the ceremony, and then so I got the whole 8 minutes of everything, and he kind of stops a minute before, and he says, "Pull out your little recording box," and I had a cassette recorder, and he takes the mic. I have a microphone on wire, so it's got the little rubber thing so the wind doesn't make noise. So, and he tells the story of it, so it could be the background for the film. So he knew that's he wanted it to be like a Hollywood movie. So every 2 or 3 weeks, a car would come by wherever we were camped out, and it was a mailman. And basically, I was sent there by the government of Australia to do an ethnography on these folks, because they were trying to get the the Olympics to come to Australia, to come to Sydney. They had just built the big, look, we got a one of those opera places, right? And so we're not heathens anymore. We're not criminals, and they wanted to have that, right, and to bring tourists to Australia. But a number of people who knew what was going on were kind of upset that the government was basically owned by the Canadian, the biggest mineral company in the world, whatever, Tinto or Tintec or whatever it is. But I don't know if it's Nazi, whatever it is. But and I think it's registered in Canada, maybe. I'm not quite sure about the particulars. But anyway, in about, how old was she? I guess 11 years before I was there in 76, or 77. No, 77, because I was in New York City. I had wired the all of the bridges and the Empire State Building and the World Trade Center with Michael Moody to decorate New York City for the big ship thing of 4th of July. So we lit everything up. Anyway, so I was in New York in 76. But in 77, I was there with this guy, and I did that video. And I was sent there by the government because they wanted me to do ethnography on these guys to prove that the Australian government wasn't racist, heathen, What did that thing they do in the mid east? That one sect people group do? What do they call it? It's not ethnic cleansing. No, genocide. That's the word. Genocide. And that was Australia's go-to thing. Genocide. Right? Didn't like it. They took you out there in the desert and drove away. So anyway, so that's why I was there. And they didn't give me a vehicle. They gave me a bus ticket. Me and Don went all the way from Canberra to Sydney, to Melbourne, to Adelaide, to Perth, and then up the other side, up to Broome, and then come down to Ayers Rock, and then go to the Nookumba, where this Aboriginal tribe was, the Wallamajiri. Anyway, and they had a written language, and they had a library, and they had it moving. You went into this cave where, the caveman, drew drawings on. No, it was, he went there and you meditated in front of it, and it became a movie. It was like, going and watching a platform on your screen, you know what I mean? And that was 1977. Anyway, so he does that, and every 3 to 6 weeks, this guy would drive out, and I had these lead kind of mailing bags that I would put my film in. Because there's no way I could develop anything. I had a changing bag, so I could change the film and the cameras without exposing it to light. But that was about it. And I could roll it back up in the container and then seal it in to I had these lead things that I put 35 millimeter film in. I had these lead things that I put 2 1/4 in. I had the thing for the 16 millimeter, can put it in. I could do it in the changing bag, and then I would put them into lead envelopes, and then I had this really interesting material that I would wrap them up in. That you couldn't put it in direct sunlight, but keeping it in a bag or out of sunlight, it wouldn't get totally toasted. So anyway, every 3 to 6 weeks, this guy would come by and he'd pick up the bag with all that stuff in it, and he'd take it back to the home office in Perth, where the experts on the Aborigines, when I got sent there, the head guy, who's, the government head guy of, Indian affairs, but he was a PhD. Yeah, I have 2 PhDs. I said, isn't that nice? I have 12. I'm more than a double. I said, you're just a double doctor. I'm a quantum doctor, right? And the guy hated my guts, but he wasn't my boss. He couldn't do anything. He was just the guy that the film got sent to, and I would write my own stuff, and I kept my own, I didn't give them everything. And when I got back to America and got into building houses in Long Island, I built my parents a really swank house, and it really didn't get, my dad paid me $500 a week. You got paid, It cost him, I built it, the materials were $32,000, labor was it was less than about $70,000. 5 years later, he sold it for $2 million. And he almost lost that deal because the lady who was going to buy it, because I automated that house. That my parents didn't have to turn on a light switch, didn't have to do anything, because my mom kept forgetting to turn on lights before she went down the staircase. So I made it so, and I had the nice little thing she could just sit in, and it would ride her up and down the staircase. So anyway, and my dad said, "Oh, that doesn't look good. Take it out." I said, "Well, you got a choice, Dad. Mom can kill herself on the staircase, or she can just ride this thing, right?" So anyway, and so I built a secret closet where I put all my, all the pictures I took of the Fillmore East, of Jimi Hendrix, The Who, when I was the electrician out at Shea Stadium and the Beatles were singing. I had photos of all of that. I had some Super 8 of it too. My father threw it all away. And so the secret closet was in the back of this closet of a bedroom upstairs that in there couldn't even see. You pushed it in, you pushed it over the side, you walked in. What my father did down in the garage, it was a 3-car garage, and he looked up and he saw the roof line. He said, "Well, if I put one of those folding stairs up there, I'll be able to like put stuff up there." And so he basically got one of my carpenter friends to do that, and he found it full of my stuff, and he threw it all away. That was my dad. Anyway, so I hadn't seen my dad in a while, and because he kind of jipped me out of our partnership, I paid you, you got and our lawyer bought everything for a few $100,000, which my father thought he was getting over because all the stuff that I was doing he thought was useless, and that guy made almost $100 million because I bought up hundreds of acres of farmland that was right next to Southampton. And the whole farm was right on the South Bay, which was like and there were some of these gigantic, beautiful New England houses because Eastern Long Island back in the day, Long Island was more Massachusetts than it was, New York because the Long Island Sound, to go from Eastern Long Island to Massachusetts or Rhode Island was only about, 8 to 15-mile boat ride on a sailboat. But if you took a horse and went all the way around to New York and then all the way back up to Connecticut and all that, that was almost 800 miles. That was like an unheard of distance. So that was that. So there were all these New England, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful houses. I know at a certain point, they just became like storage bins and parts of farms and things of that nature. And this moron, he never quite got caught, but he was burning these things up, because he was a pyromaniac. And so I bought this one farm that had a beautiful house and a beautiful barn and beautiful outbuildings. So I called up, SUNY, and there was a woman who was a historian, and she nearly went nuts because oh my God, this is beautiful. Look at this hinge. This is a Jackson. She knew every screw, every nail, everything. And so she got me a grant to fix everything up. And we took everything apart and documented it and put it back together. And that lady made her career on that, right? And then she kept finding other pieces of property and pointing me to them, and then kind of telling the people how worthless it was. And I was getting it really pretty cheap because nobody wanted stuff out there. And it was like, oh, that's terrible. And that's what my father said. So he sold everything to that lawyer for nothing. And, he put in over the 4 years, where I, fixed up one of these houses that my mother wanted to, oh, this is beautiful, right? And then cut the property into 4 things and then built another big brand spanking new house. And we bought the first piece of property we bought for about a little less than $60,000. I had like a pre-revolutionary log house that had wallpaper on it, really. And then this big, gigantic barn that had been built around before or just after the Civil War. And then a bunch of little barns all over the place. And so first I fixed the log house. And that was like, and my father's, not swift. I mean, for a smart guy, which he was, didn't realize because once people kept coming from architectural places and taking pictures and saying, this is the best job. Who did this? Well, my son did. Well, he's a genius. And he goes, I don't know. And so he sold that to just before the 86 crash when everyone had to have real estate. He sold that. And we split the property up. And so, the 50 acres or so of that, we split it up into 4 chunks. And the barn, I took down to, just took it all because it was about to fall down. There was my mom said, well, we'll just redo it, we'll live it. And I said, no, Mom, we're going to build a brand spanking new house, but we're going to like mill the wood and blah, 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 blah. Because I had all these people. There had been an economic collapse, the savings and loan collapse, And so all these guys were big, contractors and this and that, but they were over leveraged. And so they then, what can I do to get myself out? I'll sell cocaine, right? So they all went to jail and they lost everything, and their families left them, and they became alcoholics, and no one would give them a job. I hired them all because they were really good at what they did. And I made them, they couldn't, I wasn't going to give them any money to go off and drink. They had to live on site. I got some really nice tents. They lived on site, right? And they didn't go anywhere. They had no car for them. And we're out in the middle of nowhere, and I bring them, we'd have food, I cook, I had, barbecuing everything up. And I documented all of this. And the people who were there in the university, they were like amazed, right? And they were documenting it too. And my father, basically, when we were really going good, we had about 14 commercial properties, and I had redone about 6 of them, and we had a rent roll. And this is during like the collapse of the economy. We had a rent roll of $42,000 a month, right? And my father had put in maybe 200 grand over those 3 years, right? And we were $42,000 a month, and he was paying me $500, right? And we were paying the guys virtually nothing, but because my father, well, listen, you're living here, we're feeding you, nobody wants you, you suck. And that's my dad. That was his, he was like I think Donald Trump took lessons from my father, but my father had a good side. I don't know if Donnie does, right? But he may, everyone does. Depends on how deep you bury it. Let's see what you guys are saying. Santana can have a rocking house for, howdy, Sensie Bob and Cadre. Howdy, y'all. What else is I gotta go. Okay, so anyway, so that was my dad, right? And I've told this story lots of times. And so the lawyer calls me up, and this is like weird. The country's coming out of the the dregs of the '86 savings loan collapse, and people want to go live out there. And we have about 500 acres all over eastern Long Island of these farms that have these ancient buildings that we've taken down. We've kind of milled. We've got it all planned out. Got to, all the everything, and we have it in this, corporate name. The lawyer says, you got to come down to my office. I said, what's wrong? I said, just come down. Come down. And my dad said, I'm pulling the plug on this. You're just going crazy. You're doing all this stuff. You never asked me. I said, I'm your partner. I can, you're too busy in Florida. You're too busy, doing stuff with mom, which is great. I'm doing it. Look, we got a rent roll of 40. And that's when the lawyer said, you have a rent roll of $42,000, Ray, a month. What are you worrying about? He's making way more money than he's spending. I said, but he doesn't ask me. I don't have any control over this. It's, and he pulled the plug. And so I said, okay, good. So what are we going to do with this? Well, I'm going to sell it to this guy for $300,000. Oh, so I got 150. Oh no, you got your 500 a week. You get to keep the truck because it was in my name because he didn't want to pay the car insurance. Anyway, so that's my father, and he basically threw out all these films of Aborigines turning into Hendrix playing the guitar, and the woman who was about to buy the big barn house, right? Because she was like just gaga over it, and she was, really, 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 really loved the idea that was automated house. This is 1980, I guess it was 88. I mean, it's 87 when I built it, 88 when I think he sold it. Anyway, so he called up, and your mom wants to see you. So I said, okay, I'll get on the train, come visit. And because the train was kind of right near where I could walk from the train to that house. And I went to the house, and mom wasn't there. They were living down in Florida, and they were looking for another place to build a house. Anyway, not in Long Island. He didn't want anything to do with Long Island because he had a war with my brother, and so he had nothing to do with that family business anymore. So he wanted to leave Long Island. And so I basically said, okay, selling the house, and I'm giving my dad is off, picking his nose, or because he's always shitting himself. He's again very much like the orange turd. My dad was, he'd always wear shorts, so he could really baggy shorts, so he'd pull the shorts out. I'll give you like he would do this and shit on the floor. I mean, we were in Walmart's, shit on the floor. We were in Kroger's, shit on the floor. So virtually, especially down in Florida, they had pictures of my father. They got off of the CCTV cameras with a big face of him, like, which is how my dad's face. Whenever he got a picture, unless I took a picture, okay, Dad, look normal, I could take a great picture of him because he was a movie star. But if you caught him at any moment, he kind of looked like that. And so I had a picture like that with a circle and basically a line through it. And this man cannot come in this store. So there was no place my father, within, 40 miles of wherever he lived, he couldn't go into a supermarket or a Walmart's or any of that. And that was my dad. He would just shit on you. That was his thing. But he was a good American. He was a great capitalist. He lived by that motto. And that's what my father did, is what he is a emblem of where we are today, right? And now you can't, like everyone wants to, judge or get down or, be, right? But what's happened in the past is gone. What we're doing now, that's where we had to be conscious intent. Are we? No. Because, like, look at Donnie's pulled the plug on everything, every norm. Like, he got rid of all of the national labs. He sold them off, right? And he took the money. There are labs, like Lawrence Livermore, all of those labs, right? And, especially virtually like NOAA had 20 different labs that were the quintessential historical reference point of science to weather. And he pulled the plug on it all. And what's his name? Musk took all of that with him when he was douching it up and scraping everything. And then he went and goes and builds the world's biggest data center in Memphis, Tennessee, right in the black community, and puts 40 gas turbines and, just these black clouds. You ever see a diesel truck go by you? Right? Well, that's what they're gas turbines are very clean. And not really. So that's what we're doing now. And we have unplugged ourselves from everything that has to do with international responsibility and response to the welfare of humanity. We have, like, AID, we pulled that, that will, before, I would say, this time next year, I would say right now, what Donnie and Elon did probably has already sealed the fate of maybe 14 million people, that maybe by Halloween they will be dead. And if that occurs, that Halloween, all those ghosts are going to be here. It's going to be interesting. Now, I live in a super hyper paranormal energetic place. That's why I picked it. And that's why there's nobody here. They come and build houses, trees fall on them, they go nuts, they go insane, they end up in jail, they OD. I don't have to do anything. Now, I can be annoyed because between the time they show up and the time they die or move or go someplace, they're annoying. But that's the lesson for me, to be patient, to be forgiving, right? I can talk smack like this because I'm a griot and I can tell you a story and don't believe a word I say. None of this actually happened. This is all for your entertainment's sake, right? And, Google keeps sending me, you may lose your Google history. Well, that's why I'm telling you kids. I wouldn't doubt it if we have the sun. Why it's so freaking hot and now about to snow in the Midwest is because the sun is going through really whack job things. And why did Donnie? Because he's just reading a script. The script told him to get rid of any documentation of what's going on in the weather so the humans won't know. I mean, all you got to do is go outside and, you get skin cancer in 15 minutes. Right? There's this place I go where a lot of interesting people in the 3 count. It's like an old folks home. But it's like Section 8 housing. So these people they're not holler folk. They're not damaged goods. These are all people who came from other places, found this place really nice like I did, but they found it even earlier. They found it, well, I did find it in 69, but I didn't buy my place until 03. These people all bought, they in the 60s and 70s, back to the country, that whole kind of thing. This whole place is built of, there's 180 apartments and they're all in there and they got nothing to do. So it's air conditioned. They're not going to bake in the summertime, but it's got a central court and it's really beautiful and it's got trees, and over on one side there's a gurgling something, and there's shade, there's shade trees, mimosas and other things. But the UV is so intense, these people look like burnt. When you put a hot dog on a grill and you forget about it for about 6 hours and it's black and really, and now inside, you could probably eat that, but the rest is like kind of, well, that's what all these people look like. And I had this coat right here, this coat right here. See this coat? See that white thing? Between that and the other part of the coat, there's a material that have these little vents that take the moisture of your body when you're sweating, and it kind of evaporates it off. And whenever you have a liquid go into a gas, that's what refrigeration is. So this thing is like a air conditioning unit. And so it's, way cool than anything else. And the other side, what it does, that little filament inside there protects you from UV. So I'm sitting under the tree and I'm wearing this jacket. It's a thin jacket. Why are you wearing? It's so hot. Why are you wearing a coat? It's like, it would be too complicated to explain it to that crew. But and then I would say, well, I don't want to end up like you guys because, well, May, she just died of skin cancer, and Bob last week died of skin cancer, and Mary just yesterday died of skin cancer. Just killed over with skin cancer. They said it was skin cancer. No one knew that she had skin cancer. Everyone I knew in Australia. Why I wear that coat is that everyone I knew in Australia is dead. Let's say this. Every white person I knew in Australia is dead of skin cancer. And they all died in their 40s. Me, I had this gigantic umbrella that I had lined with first lead, whatchamacallit, aluminum foil. It was aluminum foil, thin like that, but lead. Put that there. First I had this lead paint, put that on there. Then I put this other material that vibrated at a different frequency, and I kind of glued that onto that. And then I glued the lead tinfoil on that, and then I had this very nice linen, but it also was absorbent of radiation, So and it was big, like 8 foot. It was like something you put on a picnic table, and I would put that up. It could unfold or fold up into something you could stick in your pack. You could take it out, and it's like Army Swiss knife, And I had this thing on my pack that I could stick it into, and it was very light. Unless a big wind came and blew me away, I would be totally protected. And people just made ridiculous fun. I used to also wear a kaftan, right? The thing that Arabs wear out there in the desert. He's wearing a dress, and they'd be running around, in these little nutsack shorts and T-shirt, and look at him. Anyway, I try not to do any of the above. I try to be understanding. I try to, like in the house. Once I bring that one up, I was just watching the bureau, and it's like everyone in the waiting room, the all the people that I call women with clipboards, they were treating the poor people just really obnoxiously. Once you were called, the nurses were kind of nice and gentle, and oh, take your time, don't worry, because I was sitting there, I was early, and I walked over, and as I was walking over, she yelled at this guy who was, she yelled his name, and he got up, and he was kind of hobbling, and you know, and I was like deferential, like, here, buddy, you go in front of me, and she screamed at him, hurry up, I don't have all day. He had two canes. He didn't have the walker. He had the two canes that kind of go on your arm. Anyway, so that's what I was observing. But once I got on the inside, they were really, really sweet and nice, and liked. I was telling them stories, and telling them my whole medical thing and explaining everything. And they, so the head nurse, who looked like she was in her 60s, she was like down the hall, and she had an office, and she had beautiful windows, had a great thing of the mountains, really strong air. The place was like a meat locker. It was like super cold. And she was in there, but she had the door open. And anyway, I had 3 different nurses come in and take my blood pressure and do this and find out about that. And I would talk to them, tell them stories and all that. And I had brought one of the birdhouses, and now there were all a bunch of them. So, hey, I wanted to give it to the doctor, and but they were. So I said, okay, girls, next time I come, I'm going to bring birdhouses for it, because each one came in, was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And then, oh my God, this is so beautiful, blah, 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 right? And I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and they said, do you want the door closed when we're not? No. I mean, when you're here and we're talking about stuff, close it. But keep the door open, because if you close that, every time you close that door, this room becomes like 20 degrees colder than the hallway. So no. So I could like look right out there, see the girl. And she had this, not altar, but these shelves in front of her, the head lady, of all these kind of fun little trinkety stuff. Who knows where it came from or whatever it was. Anyway, and I brought I put the tree house right there on the desk next to me. And I said, I'm giving this to the doctor. And, oh, I wish I blah, blah, blah. Right. So at a certain point, and I never got to see the doctor, right? He's too busy. God knows where he was. But anyway, so while I'm waiting for the doctor, and I told all these stories and all this, and I got all the girls to sign on to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensie Owl Bob. Get people to turn on to the show. Thumbs up, comments, all the rest. Send some money into, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, at PayPal. Go to PayPal, and they say who it is, what's the email, Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, right? And then I always get to, somebody sent me $120 last month, and I had to go figure out how to do it again, because they always change the freaking protocols. But in one of my banks that it's hooked up to, there's this, this one lady who's, she was, new girl, then teller, then this. Now she's like she really runs that branch, right? A very nice person. And she always, when she's not busy, she comes out, takes me to her office. So, what do you need, Al? And that's kind of what I do. I go in and make my mark without urinating on the floor. And people take care of me, pretty much. And I take care of them in ways that they don't quite understand. Anyway, so I'm sitting in that doctor's office, into that, examining room, waiting for the doctor maybe. And so the lady who comes in, and she closes the door. And she goes, I've been watching you. I said, what? She goes, oh, yeah. See, there's a thing, a speculum. That's the thing they look in your ear and up your nose and in your asshole. It's got a little light and a little lens. Well, and it's got, the one that goes up your asshole, the one that goes in your nose, the one goes up, your ear, and when they look in your eye, and it's usually against the wall, and it's usually it's either got wires that take it, or it's got a battery that you kind of just plug it into the USB port. But anyway, right there's a red light, and right next to it, it's like a little black thing that's not lit up. It looks just like what the red light looks like, but it's not a red light and it's not lit up. It's just there. Anyway, she goes, see that? That's a TV camera. They're all over the place. Everywhere there's one of these things is a TV camera for security reasons, right? So anyway, I was watching you when, and I said, oh, that's so people don't steal Band-Aids and rubber gloves and things like that. And she says, well, more than that. But anyway, it's for us, really. So if someone wants to sue us like you, we have it documented what happened. So anyway, I said, okay. But anyway, she goes, you just amused me. And I said, my name is Larry. And she said, my name is Ethel. And she goes, I just love that house. And I said, I see you came at that office and you have that little altar in front of that. Yeah, that's all the decorations that I find. And it kind of keeps everyone's, our break room is decorated the same way. And I saw you promising everyone next time you come back that you're going to bring a birdhouse. And she goes, why don't you let me have that? I'm going to put it up there and I'll rearrange everything so it's all, she's still like a little girl who plays house. I'm going to do it so all the little trinkets are like, having a tea party with the birdhouse. So I said, spot on, girl. So we talked about this and talked about that, and she talked about the end of medicine. And she goes, I heard you going on about all the other places that take care of you, and even the really good ones that totally screw up, but you're still alive. She goes, that's the way it is. And she goes, I'm retiring here in September. And sometimes I wonder if this place is even going to make it till then. And it's a brand new building, great building. They spent zillions of dollars on it. And that's the end of empires. That's what they do. They build these gigantic edifices, and they make the empire bigger and bigger until it collapses from the center. And if you ever read The Heart of Darkness, that's what he's talking about. Anyway, so there's only one guy left. I'm closing the door, so executed. So, yes, that was a bit close. I guess it's going to rain again. So I'm going to sail away right now, but I'm going to come back. Let's see. Where's my other phone? Let's see what time it is. Yeah, it's 2:30. So I'll pursue a look at what's going on in the World Wide Web. Let's see what somebody has just. Oh, look, a bunch of you guys said stuff. Jamie. Let's see. Video shorts format. Yeah. 8-bit, 16 millimeter. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, what does that mean? What button on the side do I have to push? What's it going to do? The best thing I'm going to do is just say goodnight, Susie, and I'll come back, see if I can. What does this thing do? Retouch on, no. Green screen. No. Oh. Don't allow. Done. Yeah, I gotta get out. How do I get out of this stuff? Oh my God! I'm in the green screen! Ah! Oh, the green monster's got me! Oh my God! Ah!